The east coast of Australia is one of the most beautiful places on earth. I know because it's a place I call home. It has many hidden jewels with a contrast of environments and has some special islands that lie off its shore. Our journey starts in Tasmania, a land of wilderness, misty valleys, giant trees and stunning national parks. Then we head north to Stradbroke Island, nestled off the Queensland coast, and its wonderful marine life, before finally heading to Heron Island, a perfect coral cay to see nesting turtles and their labour of love. But first, the island state, which boasts one of the oldest ecosystems in the world.
This is why I come to Tassie. Look at it, a picture-perfect view. Pretty surreal. National park, green, no buildings, unspoilt.
Here are lush national parks of mesmerising beauty that are a hiker's and outdoor enthusiast's playground.
Tasmania has many beautiful national parks, like this one at Mount Field.
In fact, Tassie boasts having 40% national parks in total area. But Tasmania has something even more remarkable. Deep in this island state nestles a wilderness like no other. It supports the largest eucalypt trees in the world and an environment that dates back to the time of the dinosaurs. The ecosystems that giant trees live in support hundreds of thousands of species of life and help keep our world oxygenated. They also help in maintaining a stable environment, which has allowed species like man to thrive.
There's some little holes, look at all the little holes in here.
When nature unleashes its fury, it can wreak havoc. But this world is designed to take such an onslaught. But when man strikes his fatal blows, the effects can change the landscape forever. In Tasmania, I would see the beauty and the beast.
I am 48 metres above the Heron River on the Terhune Airwalk. It is an amazing perspective. Although we're only 2/3 up the height of the giant trees, it sure looks a long way down.
I came here to walk among the giants, these stunning eucalyptus regnums that grow big in a precious wilderness that is super rich in biodiversity. But all was not settled here. The trees were littered with people with a message, and a sickening truth started to unfold. To understand the messages in the trees, I would have to hike further into the Tasmanian wilderness. I joined Frank, a forester from Germany, who came to Tasmania for our wonderful forests.
Wow!
Oh, what do you say about that? That's a huge one, isn't it?
Is that the mother of all myrtles?
It is.
This is 500 to 1,000 years old?
Yeah, anything in between there.
It's a monster. The monster myrtle. And we're going to measure it. This could quite possibly be the biggest myrtle in Australia.
Look at that. Oh, here I am, coming back.
Do we take it around that? Oh no, that's a tree fern as well. Well, you can really see all the ferns that grow out of it.
Look at that. Just over 11.5 metres.
This area is the largest example of the ancient Gondwana forests, going back 200 million years. But like so many places in Tasmania, this ancient ecosystem is mainly unprotected. The richer the ecosystem, the more it is likely to be sought after by logging companies. Sadly, our government is prepared to sacrifice old-growth forests to supply one of the lowest revenue and most destructive industries of all, the paper industry. Old-growth forests like these are not just selectively logged, they are clear-felled. Firebombing, poisoning of wildlife and total destruction are all part of the job, and our world leaders are the ones allowing this to happen planet-wide. Forests are turning from a rich biodiversity to this. There are no giant trees or 1,000-year-old ferns here. As I walked along another fallen giant in an incredibly rich environment, I realised what the people at the airwalk were trying to say. Let's all make a difference and stand up for diversity of life, the animals and their forest homes. We have the power to keep this world unique and wonderful, just the way it's been created. Coming up next on Roar of the Wild, I head to Tassie's east coast, and later some new sharky friends. The Frasernae Peninsula, Tasmania, is part of the beautiful Frasernae National Park and attracts adventurers who love the beauty of isolated beaches, beautiful wildflowers and plentiful wildlife. Nice to open your door on this every day. Close to the entrance to the Frasernae Peninsula, you can see the dramatic peaks of the hazards, which welcome you as you enter the park. Standing up to 300 metres high, these granite outcrops are covered with rock formations that will take your breath away. To get an overall look at this place, I was going straight to the top of Mount Amos, the highest mountain around here. The hike is quite strenuous and goes through different terrain. Like I didn't know, it just keeps going upward, but the view back is worth every footstep. Some of the rocks up here have impressive shapes and show how effective erosion can be over time. I felt like Gulliver in the land of the giants. Frasernae National Park consists of knuckles of granite mountains, all but surrounded by azure bays and white sand beaches. From the top, the views are absolutely stunning.
It is. That's got to be one of the best views you'll ever find in Tasmania. Wineglass Bay. Pretty specky.
Romantically shaped like a wineglass, there is no better place to get stranded. With company, of course. From here, it looked like its own little sun-drenched jewel with glistening turquoise seas and silica sand. Frasernae is one of Tasmania's original national parks, formerly reserved in 1916. But of course, this stunning landscape is much older. The eastern side of Tasmania shows large fault lines where the rocks broke into strips as the Tasman Sea formed about 90 million years ago. Further south on Manta Island, fossil limestone cliffs have been left on top of the granite.
These massive cliffs behind me are a geological masterpiece. They actually represent the split off from Australia from Lord Howe Island over 100 million years ago.
The story of Manta Island is dominated by the sea, from the rise and fall that created the island and left a legacy of sea creatures fossilised in its cliffs. Walking along such an ancient cliff made me feel young and alive. With the strong sea breeze in my face and plenty of fresh air, I was in no hurry, unlike the local kangaroos. Above me, sea eagles soared.
It almost looks like building blocks have built this place. In fact, it's geological history.
Aborigines were the first to see this land. European history came to this island later, and it was used as a penal colony. Its seclusion meant convicts were surrounded by water and trapped safely away from the mainland. The very things that made the island a convict settlement now make it an ideal refuge for plant and animal species that are elsewhere under threat. In the last 25 years, Manta Island has become a kind of Noah's Ark, as a number of threatened species have been introduced here in a bid to build their numbers. It's a sanctuary for forester kangaroos, Cape Barren geese, and lots of Aussie flora and fauna, like this snake I found on the way to the Painted Cliffs.
Just in front of me is a little black snake. It's pretty cold today, so he's not that active. He was probably lying out on the track here trying to get a bit of sun to warm up.
You can spend many days walking around this magic island, and plenty do, not to mention the famous Painted Cliffs that offer even more geological history.
These amazing patterns that you can see are actually formed from groundwater which runs down through the sandstone, leaves traces of iron oxide, and makes wonderful formations like this.
Tassie is a rare glimpse into the past, a place that has stayed relatively isolated and protected. With careful and modern respectful environmental management, there is hope for much of the incredible wildlife to stay sacred forever. Coming up next on Roar of the Wild, I get in some riding and diving on Straddy. Off the coast of southern Queensland lies the world's largest sand islands. They too are hidden jewels of the eastern coast. Fraser is the largest of these, but in second place is the beautiful North Stradbroke Island that lies just off the shores of coastal city Brisbane. This massive sand island for me and many Straddy fun lovers is a wild paradise, close to the city but far enough to feel you're getting away. With waves to surf on and loads of marine life, it's definitely my kind of place. Straddy is a great forward drive kind of place. Everyone generally does the right thing here and sticks to the sand highways. Doing what I always love to do, I walk around the magnificent cliff lines and through the gorges. I call this the Wild Point. From here I stare over the Pacific Ocean where big marine creatures swim and aerial predators soar high above the cliffs. This is a great way to get real close to the rhythm of the ocean.
Mantas! Heaps of them! Oh, this is pretty cool. Right down there are heaps of Manta Rays playing in the cliffs. Someone told us there were big black shapes just in the water here and we thought, could they be sharks? What could they be? And they turned out to be Manta Rays.
During summer, Manta Rays become regular visitors to this place. This is a special sighting so close in, but in nature there's always a reason.
Well, I reckon they've been probably feeding on jellyfish. We saw hundreds of little jellyfish when we were out diving, like they were everywhere. And when they get in groups like this, they generally are feeding on a lot of food.
Feeding on plankton and nutrient-rich waters is a Manta Ray speciality and often brings them close to the surface. Like the aerial counterparts, a successful hunter will not go hungry around these waters. Turtles also pop up and down along these cliffs, coming up to breathe before heading back down under the ledges. But the best way to really see the marine life is to get down amongst it. And you never have to twist my arm for an excuse to get wet.
See you on the surface.
Hang on.
Stradbroke is at a crossroads of cold and warm currents, and it's one of the first places that you start to see the influence of the tropics. It attracts both subtropical and tropical species. But down here, you get a taste of many things: colourful corals, anemone fish, and other massive rays. Bull rays do have barbs in their tail, but most of the time, if they're cornered, they just run away. Other species like the harmless leopard shark are wonderful and docile creatures, and down here, if you approach quietly and slowly, you will be rewarded with wonderful marine encounters. In winter at Stradbroke, one of the East Coast's rarest sharks use these protected waters around flat rock. Grey nurse numbers on the East Coast may have as few as 300 animals left. This shy shark was initially often killed by fishermen. Luckily today, they're protected, and areas like this are crucial for their survival. Coming up next, I visit a small coral cay nestled in the southern end of the Great Barrier Reef to see nesting turtles. In the southern end of the Great Barrier Reef is a collection of coral cays known as the Bunker Group. These cays are vital for the survival of many species of birds and turtles. Many seabirds rely on these cays to breed, and millions of birds live on the small coral cays.
I'm actually on a coral cay, which is a low island which is formed entirely from the reef on which it stands. Coral cays aren't connected to the mainland or the continental shelf. and they only formed about 6,000 years ago as the sea levels rose. But they're a stunning place to visit.
These idyllic coral cays in the south end of the Great Barrier Reef are a breeding ground for the green and loggerhead turtles. In this southern part of the reef is a healthy marine habitat surrounding these cays, attracting many marine species including the giant rays and various species of sharks. My favourite of these is a small cay with a lot of history and a sound environmental point of view. It's called Heron Island. Heron is on the Tropic of Capricorn, 112 kilometres northeast of the coast of Gladstone. It's an island of nature that has an amazing history. The first documentation known of Heron Island was in January 1843, when the HMS Fly anchored off the island, and the ship's naturalist, Joseph Bett Jukes, named it after the herons, which are part of the rich birdlife that inhabit the island. In fact, Heron Island is one of the most important islands on the Great Barrier Reef for nesting birds.
It's hard to imagine as you walk through these canopies that you're actually walking on a coral cay. It's also hard to imagine that hundreds of thousands of noddies actually live here in the summer months.
That's when between 70 and 120,000 noddy terns call this place home. This canopy provides the perfect protection for the vulnerable chicks from their aerial predators, like sea eagles or even the common seagull. Life is not always easy here. The small chicks often fall out of nests and other disasters can occur. While I was on the island, one of the nesting trees fell over, and sadly these small chicks were abandoned, gradually starving to death. But death on this island is part of the cycle of life. The amazing sticky bush, called the Frasernae grandicis, is a killer plant that claims the lives of birds. The birds get caught on the sticky seeds, and some get so stuck they can't fly. In another twist on the miracle of nature, when the bird dies, it provides the first fertiliser for the trees to grow. It's events like this and massive amounts of bird guano that make these coral cays so fertile. Some surrounding coral cays in the late 1800s became victims of guano miners and stripped of all their vegetation, but Heron's vegetation escaped.
What you are seeing here is pretty much unchanged in hundreds of years. In fact, the crew of the HMS Fly saw it just like this, I dare say.
With the sparkling waters of the Great Barrier Reef lapping at the shore, it's no wonder people have been attracted here for the island's natural assets, and not always in the best interest of nature.
A turtle soup factory was built on the island in 1923, but after just 4 years it was forced to shut down. Not only did it devastate the turtle populations, but it was a commercial failure.
In 1932, a small resort was established on the island. Today that resort is now 5-star, but the beauty is here, nature comes first.
Over the years, Heron Island's natural assets were noticed. In 1943, the island was declared a national park, and in 1951, the foundations for a research station were laid. Then in 1974, it was also declared a marine park, not only protecting the island, but also protecting the surrounding waters.
These surrounding waters extend along a reef flat. As the tide comes in, the action beneath the waterline starts to heat up, and marine life can be just a snorkel away. Down here is the domain of one of the island's most famous residents, the sea turtle. During the breeding season, it is not unusual to witness territorial males fighting. Here, 2 loggerhead males compete for their mating territory. Sea turtles can be found all along the Great Barrier Reef, but Heron Island is one of the best places to see turtles both in and out of the water.
I've spent most of the night with these turtles.
They've been busy laying last night. In fact, probably 40 to 50 turtles were up on this beach last night.
In the height of the season, this beach becomes a turtle highway. It starts around dusk as the female turtles make their way to shore. Heavy with eggs, they must pull themselves up the beach, using their front flippers to above the high tide line, where the eggs will not get swamped. Turtles travel vast distances, but females will always return to the beach where they were hatched to lay their eggs. After they've dug a body pit, they excavate an egg chamber with their hind flippers. Then they lay their eggs by the dozens. Once finished, she covers the eggs with sand. Exhausted, she makes her way back toward the water.
She probably laid between 100 and 125 eggs. In about 6 to 12 weeks, these eggs will hatch.
Her heavy body is lighter, but this is definitely a labour of love.
It's not even 7 o'clock and the sun is already hot. If she doesn't hurry up, she stands the chance of overheating.
Finally, the cool water hits her body. The feeling of weightlessness must be a blessing, but the journey back to sea on the reef flat can be a dangerous one, as predators are never too far away. Finally, the safety of deep water.
Heron Island is definitely one place that has experienced the different attitudes of man. From a time when we allowed the sole income of this island to be a turtle soup factory to now. We have a resort, a research station and a marine park. With this kind of attitude, our reefs definitely have a bright future.